When my husband stood up at our son's wedding dinner, clinked his glass, and calmly announced, "Grace, this is the end of our marriage. I found someone new," my world did not shatter the way he expected. It sharpened. Because while Martin smiled proudly beside his 27-year-old secretary, while gasps spread through the room like a wave, while our son Daniel stared at us in horror, I already had everything I needed to destroy the life Martin thought he was walking into. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my wine in his face. Instead, I reached into my purse, pulled out a thick manila envelope I'd been carrying for weeks, laid it gently on the white tablecloth, and said in the calmest voice I could manage, "Thank you, Martin. I was wondering when you'd finally say it out loud." Then I pushed the envelope toward him. "For you," I added. A little something to read later. The music died mid-note. Forks froze halfway to mouths. I could feel 40 pairs of eyes burning into my back as I smoothed down my navy dress, leaned over to kiss my son on the forehead, and whispered, "I'm so sorry, baby. None of this is your fault." Then I walked out of that hall. I was halfway across the parking lot, my heels clicking against the stone path, when I heard it. A roar of panic and rage, so loud it cut through the triple-glazed windows and the evening air. That was the sound of a man realizing in real time that the woman he'd underestimated for 26 years had just outplayed him at his own game. If you're listening to my story right now, please stay with me. Hit that like button if you've ever been taken for granted. And tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this little moment of justice travels. Now, let me take you back to where it all really started. Not at the wedding dinner. Long before that. My name is Grace. I'm 52 years old, and for most of my adult life, people describe me with the same 3 words. Reliable. Supportive. Strong. They meant it as a compliment. But now, when I look back, I hear something else in those words. They meant, she will carry everything and ask for nothing. I met Martin in 1996, in a small branch office of Riverside Community Credit Union, where I was the new accounts clerk and he was the charming insurance agent who came in to pitch a policy to our manager. I was 24, fresh out of community college, proud of my permanent job and my modest little apartment with its second-hand couch and wobbly kitchen table. I still remember the first time he looked at me properly. I was balancing a cash drawer, my fingers ink-stained from counting deposit slips, when he leaned on the counter and said, "You're too smart to be stuck in a place like this forever. You know that?" I laughed, flustered. "Well, someone has to make sure people's money doesn't go missing." He grinned. "How about you make sure my money doesn't go missing?" Dinner on Friday. 6 months later, he proposed with a simple gold ring in the parking lot of that same credit union. It was November 1996. We were standing under a flickering street lamp, our breath fogging in the cold, my fingers numb from closing out the safe. "I don't have much yet," he said, voice shaking slightly, "but I'm going to build something big. We'll build it together. I just need a woman who believes in me." Those words hooked straight into my heart. A woman who believes in me. I had grown up watching my mother work 2 cleaning jobs while my father drank through every paycheck. I promised myself that when I married, I'd be the opposite of my mother's sadness. I would be the woman behind a successful man. The rock. The stable one. So I said yes. We got married in June 1997 in a small church with plastic flowers and a rented organist who played too loud. Our reception was at a buffet restaurant where my cousins danced until their shoes came off. I thought it was the happiest I would ever be. I did not know, then, how many small pieces of myself I would give up for that happiness. Our first big decision as a married couple came 3 months after the wedding. Martin's company offered him a promotion in a bigger city, 3 hours away. "We can't say no to this, Grace," he said, pacing our tiny living room, waving the letter. "It's an extra $12,000 a year. Think of what we could do with that. A house. A car. Kids if you want them." At the time, my world was that credit union branch. I'd just been promoted to senior teller, and my manager had hinted that I had a future in compliance. But the promotion meant we had to move. "What about my job?" I asked quietly. He sat beside me, took my hands, and did that thing where he looked straight into my eyes like I was the only person on the planet. "It's just for a few years," he said. "We'll get settled, and then you can find another credit union. Or, hey, You could finally start that catering business you're always talking about. Remember? Grace's country kitchen. He remembered. Before banking, my real dream was cooking. Southern food, the way my grandmother made it, buttered cornbread, slow-cooked ribs, peach cobblers so soft it melted on your tongue. I'd talk about opening a little place with 6 tables and a chalkboard menu. Once we're stable, I said. Exactly, he replied. Once we're stable. I quit my job. We moved. That was sacrifice number 1. Sacrifice number 2 came 2 years later, in May 1999, when I found out I was pregnant. Martin cried when I showed him the test. He spun me around the kitchen, nearly knocking over the kettle. You are not working at some bank with swollen ankles, he said, kissing my forehead. Let me handle the money, okay? Stay home. Enjoy this. Be a mom. So I stayed home. We lived on his salary and my careful budgeting. I clipped coupons, cooked from scratch, turned 1 chicken into 3 meals. We didn't have much, but we had enough, and that felt like love to me. Our son Daniel was born in January 2000 during a snowstorm. When the nurse placed him in my arms, I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. I remember thinking, this is what all the sacrifice is for. This is worth it. I meant it. By the time Daniel turned 5, Martin had moved up again. Now he talked about opening his own insurance agency. Grace, this is our chance, he said, spreading spreadsheets all over the dining table. But I'll need help with the business loan. My credit got a little banged up from my first marriage, remember? Ah, yes. The first marriage. I just don't want to go through that kind of divorce again, he told me early in our relationship. She took everything she could. I need to protect us if anything ever goes wrong. That was when he asked for the prenup. Just a standard agreement, he'd said back then, all earnest eyes. It protects us both. You know how messy money can get. I trusted him. I signed. To be honest, I barely skimmed the 30-something pages. I saw the words adultery and asset protection, but I was in love. Cheating felt like something that happened in movies, not in my life. In 2005, when he asked me to co-sign the loan for his new agency, I did it without thinking. My credit score was 812. His was a not. It's our business, he said. Our future. I told him I believed in him. We mortgaged the house. I went back to work so we could survive while he built the company. The only job I could get quickly was, ironically, back at a branch of Riverside Community Credit Union, this time as a loans and accounts specialist. I became really good at reading money trails. Balances. Transfers. Patterns. Lies people tell themselves about their spending. I didn't know then that this skill would be the knife I used later to cut his fantasy life to pieces. Back then, it just meant I was the reliable one again. The first time I noticed Martin changing, it was so subtle I almost missed it. It was 2017. Daniel was in college on a partial scholarship. I was 44. We were having dinner, lemon chicken, roasted potatoes, the kind of meal I made without thinking. Once Daniel graduates, I said, half laughing, maybe it'll finally be my turn. I could cut my hours to part-time. Start catering on the side. I already catered church events. You know, they love my food. Martin didn't look up from his phone. That's nice, babe, he mumbled. But the market is tough. You really want to start something at your age. At your age. Those 3 words landed like a slap. I swallowed. My age. He glanced at me and forced a smile. I'm just saying it's risky. Why not stick with what's safe? You're so good with numbers. Maybe help me more at the office instead? There's so much bookkeeping to handle. So instead of chasing a dream, I did his books. For free. After my own job. Evenings, weekends, whenever he needed. I told myself this was partnership. On Sundays, I'd prep food for the week while reconciling his business expenses at the kitchen table, his receipts smelling like aftershave and restaurant grease. That's when I first saw the name. Chloe Tate. It appeared on an employment form in 2018. She was 24, fresh out of some business program, hired as his administrative assistant/office manager. She's a lifesaver, he said. Young people really understand technology. I baked an extra batch of brownies for the office to welcome her to the team. That's who I was back then. The good wife. The nice woman. the one who made everyone feel comfortable. Chloe had big blue eyes, straight blonde hair, and perfect white teeth. She called me Mrs. Allen and giggled when I corrected her. Please call me Grace. For a long time I saw nothing. Or maybe I saw everything and refused to name it. I told myself, she's young enough to be his daughter. He loves you. You've been together over 20 years. You're paranoid. But disrespect is a slow leak, not a sudden explosion. He started working late more often. He started coming home with cologne that wasn't the one he used to wear. He started dressing sharper, buying fitted shirts and new ties, saying, "Image matters in business, Grace." When I'd climb into bed beside him, he'd roll over with a muttered, "I'm exhausted. Big day tomorrow." By 2020, I could tell something inside our marriage had shifted, but every time I tried to talk about it, he brushed me off with the same phrase. "You're overthinking things." If anyone watching this has ever been told that while their gut is screaming the opposite, please know you're not crazy. You're not overthinking. You're seeing what they hope you'll ignore. The crack that finally let the truth through didn't look dramatic at all. It looked like an envelope. A plain blue and white envelope from a bank I didn't recognize, mixed into the usual stack of bills on our kitchen counter. It was February 2022. Cityline Bank, preferred reward statement. I frowned. We didn't have any accounts with Cityline. All of our personal accounts were at Riverside. The business accounts were at Fairview Commercial. I knew them all because I handled them all. I slit the envelope open with the butter knife. What I saw made my chest go cold. Account holder, Martin Allen. Card type, Platinum Rewards. Credit limit, $20,000. Current balance, $11,783.42. Below that, Hotel Aurora, Lakeside Resort, $642.18. La Belle Maison Jewelry, $1,295. Serenity Springs Spa, Couples Retreat, $980. Weekend restaurant charges in a town 3 hours away. On weekends he'd told me he was at regional conferences. My first thought wasn't even, he's cheating. My first thought was, where is this money coming from? We had a budget. I watched every dollar. There was no extra income, no bonus he'd told me about. At the bottom of the statement, in small print, it showed the bank account he used to pay the bill. It wasn't our joint checking. It wasn't the business account. It was something else. Account ending in 7349. I had never seen that number in my life. My fingers started to shake. Years of training kicked in. The same instincts I used at work when I smelled fraud. I heard his car in the driveway. I stuffed the statement back into the envelope and threw it into the drawer beside the fridge. That evening, I tried to act normal until after dinner. "Martin," I said dryly, wiping my hands on a dish towel. "Do we have an account with Cityline Bank?" He was half watching TV, half scrolling through his phone. "What?" I repeated the question. He didn't even blink. "Oh, that. Business card. For client entertainment and travel. You know how it is." "I don't," I replied. "Because I handle your business books and I've never seen Cityline Bank statements." That made him look up. His eyes hardened just a little. The tiniest flicker. If I had blinked, I might have missed it. "Our accountant suggested it," he said slowly. "Easier for tax purposes. Don't worry about it, Grace. It's under control. Don't worry about it." Those 4 words were like someone patting a child on the head. That night, while he snored softly beside me, I stared at the ceiling and, for the first time in 26 years, allowed myself to say the thing I'd been terrified to name. He's lying to me. And if he was lying about money, there was a very high chance he was lying about more. Here's the thing about working at a credit union for almost 3 decades. You learn that people can lie with their mouths. They can lie with their eyes. They can even lie with their tears. But money? Money doesn't lie. Money leaves footprints everywhere it goes. 2 weeks after the Cityline statement appeared, I used my lunch break to request my own full credit report. Not his. Mine. Because remember that loan I co-signed? Remember us mortgaging the house together? Our finances were intertwined. If he opened new accounts that touched my name in any way, they would show up. I sat in the staff break room, a cup of stale coffee cooling beside me, as I scrolled through the report on my phone. Credit cards I recognized. Our mortgage. The car loan. Then there it was. Cityline Bank Joint Savings. Opened. September 2020. Primary, Martin Allen. Secondary, Chloe Tate. I stared at the screen so long my vision blurred. Joint savings. With his secretary. Not business partner. Not cosigner. Not corporate account. Joint. I printed the report as soon as I got back to my desk, my hands cold and sweaty at the same time. During my scheduled account review time, I used our systems to do what I did for suspicious member accounts every single day. Follow the money. Over 15 months I traced. Transfers from our joint savings to that secret account. $300 here, $700 there, $1,200 at Christmas. Total, $38,500. Automated payments from that account to the Cityline credit card. Large ATM withdrawals in cities he'd claimed were conference locations. A wire transfer labeled apartment deposit, lakeside properties. Every line was a nail in the coffin of the person I thought I married. That night, I didn't confront him. I went home, cooked dinner, laughed at his work stories, and pretended nothing was wrong. After he fell asleep, I sat at the foot of the bed with my laptop, my heart pounding, and created a folder. I named it Evidence. Inside I saved PDF copies of the credit report, screenshots of transfers, transaction histories, anything that could be printed and placed under someone's nose in a courtroom. It hurt so much I could barely breathe, but another part of me, some quiet, steady part one had ignored for years, was suddenly very, very awake. She whispered, "If you are going to be betrayed, you will not be destroyed. You will be prepared." A month later, my suspicion turned into certainty. I wasn't even trying to catch him. It was a Thursday in May. I had the day off because the branch was upgrading its system. I decided to surprise Martin with lunch from his favorite deli, the one that made those overstuffed pastrami sandwiches he loved. I didn't call ahead. I wanted it to be a nice little gesture. That's who I still believed I was. His agency was on the second floor of a small office building. I'd been there 100 times, bringing snacks, helping with paperwork, just being supportive. The reception area was empty when I stepped out of the elevator. "Hello," I called. No answer. Then I heard it, through the thin wall that separated the front desk from his private office. Laughter. Not polite laughter. Intimate, breathless laughter. Hers. Chloe's. Followed by his voice, low and playful in a way I hadn't heard directed at me in years. "You're going to make me late for my next appointment," he said. "Then reschedule," she replied, teasing. "I'm more fun than any client." I stood there, frozen, the paper bag cutting into my fingers. Something thumped softly. A chair. A desk. The sounds of bodies moving where they had no right to be moving. My heart started beating so loud I thought they would hear it. I could have stormed in. I could have ripped open the door and caught them. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I turned around, quietly walked back to the elevator, pressed the button. On the way down in that mirrored metal box, I looked at my reflection and whispered, very softly, "Okay, it's real." The woman staring back at me looked calm, deadly calm. In that moment, something snapped, but not in the way people think when they say they snapped. I did not snap into rage. I snapped into clarity. I knew I needed help. Not from my sister, who would have marched over there and tried to claw his eyes out. Not from my mother, who would have told me to pray and endure for your marriage. I needed someone who understood the language of courts and contracts. Her name was Anita Flores. We'd met years ago in a financial literacy workshop I helped run at the branch. She was the guest speaker, a small, sharp-eyed family law attorney who explained prenuptial agreements and divorce settlements in plain English to a room full of women who'd never heard words like marital property before. We'd kept in touch. Coffee every few months, Christmas cards, the occasional text. I called her that night. "Anita, it's Grace," I said, my voice shaking. "Are you taking on new clients?" She was silent for a second. She heard everything in that one question. "Come to my office tomorrow during your lunch break," she said. "Don't bring your husband. Bring your paperwork." I didn't sleep much that night. I went through our old files instead. Tax returns, mortgage documents, insurance policies. And then, at the very back of the drawer, in a yellowing folder I hadn't opened in years, I found it. Prenuptial Agreement, Allen/Rivers, 1997. I sat on the floor, my back against the bed, and read it properly for the first time in my life. 32 pages. Legal language. Clauses and subsections. On page 19, something made me stop. Section 12, Fidelity and Adultery Clause. In the event that either party engages in extramarital sexual relations during the course of this marriage, the asset protections afforded to said party under this agreement shall be considered null and void. The innocent spouse shall be entitled, upon proof of such adultery, to full and fair distribution of assets, including but not limited to the marital residence, retirement accounts, and any business interests accumulated during the marriage. I read that paragraph 3 times. The prenup, the thing I'd always thought was my disadvantage, suddenly looked very different. Martin had insisted on that clause because of his first wife. He'd been so determined to never be taken for everything again that he'd built a trap, and then stepped straight into it. The next day, I sat across from Anita in her office, the prenup on her desk, the evidence folder beside it. She read in silence for 10 minutes, her pen tapping occasionally against the table. Finally, she looked up. "Grace," she said slowly, "do you understand what you're sitting on? My failing marriage?" I replied weakly. She shook her head. "No, you're sitting on a legal bomb. And your husband lit the fuse." She turned the prenup around and tapped Section 12. He insisted on an adultery clause. That's rare, but it's crystal clear. If he cheated, his protections disappear. And with this, she added, patting my folder, you don't just have suspicions. You have a money trail. You have a joint account with his mistress. You have charges for hotels and jewelry. You have everything any judge with eyes would need. My throat tightened. So, what does that mean? In numbers. In reality. She leaned back. It means you likely keep the house. At least half, possibly more of the business value, depending on how we structure your contribution. A majority of the retirement accounts. Spousal support. Given your years of unpaid labor and the fact that you supported his career while putting your own on hold. I just stared at her. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something other than grief and confusion. I felt power. It's not about revenge, Anita said quietly, watching my face. It's about justice. About you not walking away from 26 years with nothing but memories and recipes. Recipes. My chest ached. I want my life back, I whispered. And I want him to feel what it's like to lose something he took for granted. She nodded once. Then you need to be very, very smart from this moment on. No screaming. No throwing him out. No warnings. You gather. You document. And when you're ready, you file first. You control the narrative. How long do I have? I asked. She tilted her head. Is there any significant event coming up where he would want to make a statement? A birthday? A family gathering? I laughed, a bitter little sound. Our son is getting married next month. Anita's eyes narrowed. Then I can almost guarantee you something, she said. Men like your husband love an audience. What do you mean? I mean he might be planning to humiliate you publicly, she replied. Walk in with his new love, force you to accept it, make you look small and old and replaced. If I'm right, that moment will be the perfect place to hand him the consequences. My stomach turned. But as she outlined the strategy, file the divorce quietly a few days before, freeze the accounts, draft the demands, another feeling rose up slowly inside me. Not dread. Anticipation. For the next 6 weeks, I became the best actress I have ever been in my life. Every morning I made Martin's coffee exactly how he liked it, 2 sugars, a splash of cream. I kissed his cheek. I smiled when he called me babe. Every evening I asked, long day, and nodded sympathetically when he said, you have no idea. When he spent Saturday working with Chloe on the new marketing strategy, I packed homemade sandwiches for them and said, you two don't work too hard. All the while, Anita and I were building my new future behind his back. She filed the divorce petition quietly, marking the grounds as adultery and listing the evidence we planned to present. She prepared motions to freeze our joint accounts and placed temporary restraints on the business funds. At the credit union, I printed every document I might need later. Last 3 years of tax returns. Proof of my co-signing his business loan. My pay stubs from years where I'd been working double duty to keep us afloat. I opened my own checking account in just my name and started redirecting my direct deposits there. I told no one. Not my sister. Not my son. Not my closest friend at work. I lived in 2 realities at once. On the surface, I was the loyal wife helping plan our son's wedding, fussing over flower colors and guest lists. Underneath, I was a strategist walking through a minefield, counting my steps, waiting for the right moment to hand my husband the bomb he'd built. 3 days before the wedding, he made the mistake that told me Anita had been right. We were eating takeout at the kitchen table because I was too tired to cook, which was a convenient excuse for all the late-night planning I'd been doing. "Grace," he said, clearing his throat. "There's something I need to tell you about the reception." I looked up, heart steady. "What about it?" "I've invited Chloe," he said. He watched my face like a doctor watching for an allergic reaction. "Chloe." I repeated. "From the office?" "Yes," he said. "She's been a huge help with the business, and I just thought it would be nice to include her. As a thank you." He said this about the woman whose name was on a secret joint account with him. About the woman whose lipstick I'd smelled on his shirt 2 weeks earlier. About the woman I had seen laughing in his office while his hands were clearly not on his keyboard. I felt heat rise in my chest, then fall again. I thought of Anita's words. No screaming. No warnings. So I smiled. "That's thoughtful," I said softly. "I'm sure Daniel will appreciate everyone who helped his father get here." For a second, he looked confused. Maybe he'd expected jealousy, tears, a fight he could later point to as proof that I was unstable. But when he saw none of that, when he saw only calm acceptance, he smiled back with something like triumph. "I knew you'd understand," he said. That was the night I packed the manila envelope. Inside I placed a copy of the filed divorce petition, copies of the bank statements, printouts of the joint account with Chloe, the prenup, with the adultery clause highlighted in yellow, a letter from Anita summarizing in calm legal language what he stood to lose. I sealed it, wrote his name on it in my neatest handwriting, and then I waited for the wedding. If you've ever had to smile through the most humiliating moment of your life, you know how surreal it feels. Daniel's wedding was beautiful. Riverside Manor, with its high ceilings and crystal chandeliers. White roses arranged in glass vases. Soft piano music. The ceremony itself was perfect. My son in a navy suit, his bride Maya in lace. The vows so sweet I nearly cried for entirely different reasons. For a few hours, I let myself forget what was coming. I watched my boy, our boy, dance with his wife, flash that crooked grin he'd had since he lost his front teeth in 2nd grade. This is what it was all for, I thought. Every saved receipt. Every overtime shift. Every meal cooked and bill balanced. He was worth it. During dinner, I sat at the head table with Daniel and Maya beside me. The chair on my other side, where Martin should have been, was temporarily empty. He'd gone to the restroom. I saw her before I saw him. Chloe in a red dress so tight I wondered how she was breathing, her hair in perfect waves, her heels clicking on the wooden floor. She walked straight to our table and slid into the seat across from me, the one reserved for Martin's special guest. Her eyes met mine. "Hi, Grace," she said, giving me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hello, Chloe," I replied pleasantly. "You look expensive." Daniel shot me a look, eyebrows raised. He knew of her as Dad's assistant. Nothing more. "Dad invited her," he whispered. "So it seems," I said. Before I could say anything else, Martin appeared behind my chair, adjusting his tie. He didn't sit. Instead, he picked up his champagne glass and tapped it with his fork. The room fell quiet. "Excuse me, everyone," he said. "Can I have your attention for a moment?" Conversations stopped mid-sentence. The band lowered their volume. I felt my heartbeat slow. Not speed up slow. It was like my body knew this scene already, like I'd rehearsed it. "I just want to say a few words," Martin continued. "First, to my son Daniel and his wonderful bride, Maya." He lifted his glass toward them. May you build a life of love and honesty together. Honesty. I almost laughed. Then he turned toward me. And to my wife, Grace, he said. We've had a long journey together. 26 years. We raised an incredible son. We built a life. The way he said had made something tighten in Daniel's jaw. But, Martin went on, sometimes journeys reach their end. And after much thought, I've realized that this is the end of ours. A fork clattered somewhere to the left. Someone sucked in a breath. Beside me, Daniel stiffened. Dad, what are you doing? Martin held up his hand. Grace, he said, looking me dead in the eye, I've met someone new. Someone who makes me feel alive again. Someone who understands the man I am now. He reached out his other hand toward Chloe. She's here tonight because I want to be honest finally. This is Chloe. She and I were together. And I'm asking you, in front of our family, to accept that this is my future. Silence. You know how in movies, everyone gasps in unison? Real life is quieter. I heard one aunt mutter, "Oh my God." I heard a glass being set down way too hard. I heard Maya whisper, "Daniel." 40 people were waiting for me to explode. To sob. To slap him. To make a scene that would later be described as Grace lost it at the wedding. But Anita's voice echoed in my head. You control the narrative. So I did something that shocked even me. I smiled. A small, sad smile. Then I reached down, picked up my purse and placed it on my lap. Thank you for your honesty, Martin, I said softly. He blinked, thrown off. What? I said thank you, I repeated. I appreciate the public announcement. I opened my purse. Slowly. People craned their necks to see. From inside, I pulled out the manila envelope. Thick. Heavy. His name written on the front in blue ink. Since we're sharing big news tonight, I continued, I have something for you as well. I slid the envelope across the tablecloth until it rested in front of him. He frowned. What is this? Your future, I said. In writing. For 1 second, he just stared at it. Then he laughed, a nervous little sound. Grace, what are you doing? Don't make this harder than it needs to be. It's all right, I said. You don't have to open it now. You can wait until everyone has finished their dessert. I stood up, smoothed down my navy dress, turned to Daniel, who looked like someone had punched all the air out of his chest. I am so sorry you're seeing this today, I whispered. But I promise you, this is not the end of my story, and it does not change how much I love you. Mom, he breathed, eyes shining. What is going on? You'll understand soon, I said. Then I picked up my purse and walked. I could feel the entire room holding its breath. Behind me, I heard the sound of paper tearing as he finally ripped open the envelope. I didn't turn around. I kept walking. I was almost at the exit when the roar came. What is this? The doors closed behind me with a soft click. Outside, the evening air was cool on my face. I breathed in deeply for the first time in months. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the reception hall, I could see chaos unfolding like a scene from a movie. Martin stood at our table, face drained of color, fist clenched around the papers. Chloe leaned toward him, trying to read. What does it say? She demanded. Martin, what is it? He dropped one sheet on the table. Daniel picked it up, his eyes scanning the heading. Petition for dissolution of marriage, grounds, adultery. His mouth fell open. Mom filed for divorce, he said slowly. This morning. Martin's voice cracked. She can't do this. Oh, she can, someone else said calmly. Anita stepped into the hall then, having arrived exactly when I'd asked her to. Not to make a scene. Just to be present. To be a witness. Who are you? Martin snapped. I'm Anita Flores, she replied. Grace's attorney. Chloe grabbed another page, read aloud before she could stop herself. Pursuant to Section 12 of the prenuptial agreement signed June 14, 1997, the asset protections afforded to Martin Allen are null and void upon proof of adultery. Her voice faltered. She looked up at him. Prenup? You told me the prenup kept Grace from taking anything. He swallowed. I thought it did. Anita smiled without warmth. Well, Mr. Allen, she said, it would have if you hadn't insisted on including a very robust adultery clause. She tapped the highlighted paragraph. As you can see, by engaging in an extramarital affair, documented through your joint financial accounts with Ms. Tate here, your hotel charges, jewelry purchases, and apartment deposits, you effectively handed your wife the legal right to claim a majority of the marital assets. The room was dead silent. Daniel looked from Anita to his father. Is this true? Son, listen, it's complicated. It's not complicated, Anita cut in smoothly. Your father used joint funds partially contributed by your mother's income, to finance an affair. That's not complicated. That's theft and adultery combined. Chloe's chair scraped loudly against the floor as she stood up. What do you mean joint funds? She demanded. You told me the money was yours. You said Grace didn't even understand your accounts. Martin grabbed her wrist. Chloe, not here. She yanked her arm away. Oh no, we are doing this here, she hissed. You promised me we'd be set. You promised the apartment was ours. You promised she couldn't touch your business. Anita raised an eyebrow. The apartment? Stop talking, Martin snarled. But Chloe was on a roll now, panic loosening her tongue. You said she was too old, too naive to do anything, she nearly shouted. You said she would break down and accept it. You said the prenup meant she'd leave with nothing. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Uncles shifted uncomfortably. Aunts shook their heads. Maya's parents looked like they wanted the earth to swallow them. Daniel's face hardened in a way I had never seen. Dad, he said slowly, voice shaking. You've been stealing from Mom? Stealing? Martin repeated, offended. It's marital money, Daniel. Mine to use as I see fit. Anita picked up one of the bank statements from the table. Marital means it belonged to both of you, she said. And you used it to pay for hotels with another woman. That's not using funds as you see fit. That's misappropriation. She looked around at the stunned faces. But don't worry, she added dryly. The accounts are already frozen pending the court's decision. Frozen? Chloe's face drained of color. What do you mean frozen? No one accesses them, Anita said simply. Not until the judge says otherwise. So, the apartment? Chloe whispered. I'm sure your landlord will be understanding, Anita replied politely. Chloe stared at Martin with pure hatred. You absolute idiot, she spat. Then she grabbed her clutch and stormed out, leaving him standing in the wreckage of his shattered pride. Inside the hall, people began talking in low voices. A few got up and left. Others hovered, watching. Daniel turned away from his father and found Anita. Is my mom okay? He asked. She walked out with her head high, Anita said softly. She'll be more than okay. I hadn't planned to go back inside. But when I heard him shouting my name across the parking lot, Grace, get back here. We need to talk. Something in me decided I deserved to look him in the eye one last time. I turned around slowly and walked back toward the big glass doors. When I stepped inside, the room fell silent again. Daniel stood near the table, his face pale but steady. Maya was holding his hand. Anita stood a little to the side, expression neutral. Martin turned to me, clutching the papers like a man holding onto a rope over a cliff. You can't do this, he hissed. Not here. Not now. Not like this. I tilted my head. Funny, I said. I could say the same to you. I walked right up to our table, took the top statement from his hand, and held it up. You didn't seem worried about timing when you chose our son's wedding dinner to announce you'd replace me with your secretary. Someone near the back muttered, Amen. He lowered his voice, leaning closer. Grace, please. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I made a mistake. I stepped back. A mistake, I repeated. I let the word hang there. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary card. A mistake is burning dinner. This, I gestured to the papers, is a series of decisions over months, maybe years, in which you lied, stole, and betrayed. His eyes darted around, as if searching for someone to support him. No one moved. Daniel cleared his throat. Mom, he said quietly, did you really have to do this here? My heart clenched. This was the part that hurt the most. I wish I hadn't, I said honestly. I wish your father had come to me privately like a man. But he chose an audience. He chose to turn your wedding into his performance. So I simply handed him his closing act. Maya squeezed his hand. She's right, she whispered. Martin tried a different angle. "You're going to ruin me," he said, voice rising. "You're going to take everything I've worked for." I looked at him for a long moment. "You built nothing alone," I said quietly. "I co-signed your loans. I worked full-time so you could take business risks. I did your books at midnight while you slept." I leaned in, my voice steady. "And while I was doing that, you used our money to fund hotel rooms and jewelry for a woman half my age. You did this to yourself, Martin." He opened his mouth, closed it again. Anita stepped forward, professional again. "Mr. Allen, you'll have plenty of opportunity to discuss assets in court," she said. "For now, I suggest you let your son and his wife salvage what's left of their evening." I turned to Daniel. "I love you," I said. "I am so proud of the man you are. And I am so sorry that your father's choices cast a shadow on your day." He swallowed hard. "I'm not mad at you, Mom," he said hoarsely. He looked at his father. "I just need time to process who this man actually is." That was the moment Martin's shoulders sagged. Not when I filed for divorce. Not when his accounts were frozen. Not when his mistress stormed out. It was when his son, his only child, looked at him like he was a stranger. That was the moment I knew I didn't need to hate him anymore. He had all the consequences he could handle. "I'll see you in court," I said softly. Then I walked out again. And this time I did not look back. 6 months after the wedding disaster, on what would have been our 27th anniversary, I stood in a kitchen that smelled like butter, sugar, and cinnamon, pulling a peach cobbler out of the oven. Only this time it wasn't my home kitchen. It was my kitchen. The sign outside read, "Grace's Second Chances, Catering and Comfort Food." It started small. After the wedding, I took a month off from the credit union. I needed to breathe, to grieve, to remember who I was without him. I cried a lot. I won't pretend I didn't. You can be furious and heartbroken at the same time. You can want justice and still mourn the man you thought you married. During that month, Daniel came over every Sunday. We'd sit at my scratched kitchen table drinking coffee while the divorce process crept forward. "I'm sorry I didn't see what he was doing to you," he said once, eyes wet. "You weren't supposed to protect me," I replied. "I was supposed to protect you." And I failed at that too, by staying quiet for so long. Slowly, I started cooking again, not just because we needed to eat, but because it made me feel like myself. I baked cornbread for our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, when she came home from the hospital. She took one bite, closed her eyes, and said, "Grace, baby, you're wasting your talent on numbers. This is what you were born to do." She told her church ladies. The church ladies told their cousins. By the time the divorce hearing rolled around, I had 3 paid orders for just a little home cooking for small gatherings. Anita did exactly what she'd promised in court. With the prenup and the evidence, the judge saw through Martin's performance almost instantly. He tried to cry. He tried to say we'd grown apart. He tried to suggest I was overreacting. Then Anita slid the bank statements across the table. He didn't say much after that. The final settlement gave me full ownership of our house, 65% of his retirement accounts, a buyout on my share of the business, enough to clear my debts and fund a new venture, spousal support for 5 years. He kept his car and what remained of the agency after he paid his own legal fees. He moved into a small rented apartment on the other side of town, where, from what I've heard, he mostly eats takeout and complains about how unfair life is. As for Chloe, she lasted exactly 2 weeks after the wedding. Once she realized the money was tied up and the apartment lease was not sustainable on her salary, she moved out and moved on. She'd never been in love with him. She'd been in love with the lifestyle I had helped build. I don't hate her anymore. She was greedy and selfish, yes. But she was also a mirror, showing me exactly how little he valued me. I opened Grace's Second Chances 4 months ago with the help of a small business grant and my own settlement money. The first event I catered was a 50th wedding anniversary. 50 years of marriage. 50 years of mutual respect and partnership. The couple held hands while giving their speech. The husband thanked his wife for walking beside me, not behind me. I cried in the kitchen. But it wasn't the bitter crying I'd done before. It was grateful crying, because I realized I would rather be alone than applauded for standing behind a man who never truly respected me. Now, every weekend, I fill orders for pans of mac and cheese, trays of roasted chicken, cobblers, and pies. My calendar for the next 3 months is almost full. People who eat my food tell me the same thing. It tastes like love. And the thing is, it is. But this time, the love isn't draining out of me into someone else's dream. It's flowing back into me. If you're still listening to me right now, I want you to hear this part clearly. I spent 26 years believing my value came from how much I could endure, how much I could sacrifice, how much I could forgive. I thought being a good wife meant always giving my husband the benefit of the doubt, even when the evidence was right in front of me. I thought loyalty meant silence. It doesn't. Loyalty does not mean abandoning yourself. Trust does not mean ignoring your own eyes. Love does not mean funding your own destruction. I also learned that the quiet skills you think are just your job can become the tools that save your life. All those years at the credit union, following money trails, stopping fraud, protecting other people's accounts. Those skills let me protect myself when the person stealing from me shared my bed. I learned that you can be broken and powerful at the same time. I did not plan my revenge from a place of evil. I planned my justice from a place of survival. Was it satisfying to watch his face when he realized the prenup he'd forced me to sign had become my shield? Yes. But the greatest satisfaction wasn't in his downfall. It was in my rise. The day the judge finalized the divorce, I went home, baked a small peach cobbler, and ate a warm spoonful standing in my kitchen. For the first time since I was 24, the home I was in, the bank account I was using, and the dreams in my chest all belonged to the same person. Me. If you're listening to this and you feel that something is wrong in your own story, if your partner tells you you're overthinking while their phone is always face down, if money is disappearing and you're not allowed to ask where it's going, if you feel smaller and smaller every year while they grow bigger on your sacrifices, please hear this. You are not crazy. You are not asking for too much. You are not ungrateful or dramatic. You are a human being who deserves honesty, respect, and safety, including financial safety. Sometimes the best revenge is not destroying the person who hurt you. It's building a life so solid, so peaceful, so yours that their betrayal becomes nothing more than the plot twist that pushed you into your real story. Love should never cost you your self-respect. Peace is priceless. Sometimes justice tastes like peach cobbler, smells like your own kitchen, and sounds like your own laughter echoing through a house with your name on the deed. If you made it all the way to the end of my story, thank you. Now I want to hear from you. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever ignored a red flag because you wanted to believe in someone? Tell me in the comments, and let me know what city you're watching from. I read every single one. And if stories like this speak to you, please tap that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about betrayal, justice, and second chances. Your support means more to me than you know. With love and respect, Grace.